For quite some time now, the New York Rangers have kind of made it known that they definitely want to shake up this roster, and they've already made quite a few moves to do that by waiving a guy like Barclay Goodrow and getting him claimed off waivers by San Jose. Then you got that Jacob Trouba trade, the Kakko trade. Obviously, we saw the JT Miller trade earlier on, and now recently we've seen that Ryan Lindgren trade, while also more than likely seeing a Riley Smith trade happen at some point in the very near future as well. But one big thing that the New York Rangers could also do is possibly look to trade away Chris Kreider. And we do have some information and kind of news on that situation there, where maybe it does seem like the Rangers and Chris Kreider are going to be coming to a divorce at some point in the near future, and maybe we do see a trade happen with Chris Kreider going away from the Rangers in this upcoming offseason. But let's take a look at the news in today's video and kind of discuss what a possible Chris Kreider trade could look like, while also kind of talking about what kind of an effect it could have on the New York Rangers for good or bad. So let's get right into it here, and first off, take a look at a couple quotes here from Vince Mercogliano, as he did kind of have some information on this Chris Kreider possible trade situation here, as he ends up saying, according to Vince Mercogliano of USA Today, there's a growing possibility of a divorce between Chris Kreider and the New York Rangers. Quote, my sense is that the Rangers are heading toward an eventual split with their longest tenured player, Chris Kreider, Mercogliano wrote. And with Chris Kreider being that longest tenured Ranger, and him being that first round pick from way back in 2009 of the Rangers there, and then obviously has developed such a phenomenal just career in the NHL with the Rangers, it definitely would be quite sad to see him go. But I do think at the end of the day, I understand it is definitely a business. Players get dealt all the time, and crazier things have happened. I mean, we've seen Wayne Gretzky get traded, right? So there definitely is the possibility of seeing a guy like Chris Kreider get moved, and at the end of the day, it's understandable. And if the Rangers can get back the right package in return, I definitely think it makes a lot of sense. But carrying on, though, and taking a look at another quote here from Vince Mercogliano, as he ended up saying, quote, he's been on the trade block since Drury included his name in that memo, and while the rumors have quieted down in the months since, two people with knowledge of the situation told Lohud.com, part of the USA Today network, that New York remains motivated to move him. And that's interesting. And personally, if he is going to get traded away, which I wouldn't be shocked by, I do think it makes more sense to possibly, kind of see that trade happen in the offseason. Now, I said the same thing with Jacob Trouba there. I didn't really think it was going to happen midseason. Ended up happening midseason there. Obviously, it worked out because Anaheim obviously has a lot of cap space because they haven't been too good of a team as of late. But I think, with Chris Kreider there and him having that injury right now and stuff like that, it definitely makes a lot of sense for a move to happen in the offseason rather than right now. But I definitely could be wrong. And, personally, I do think it makes sense to trade away a guy like Chris Kreider from, just a team and kind of business perspective there. I think when you take a look at where this kind of team's at right now, and with this squad kind of trying to really kind of turn a different kind of page here, I would say, and go with a different kind of core group of players going forward and kind of shift off the Zibanejads and Kreiders and kind of Panarins and kind of go maybe towards more guys like, Wakulli, a Lafreniere, a Trocheck, a JT Miller. I think that's the right decision. So trading away Kreider, makes a lot of sense there, and you're going to save a good amount of cap space as well. Right now his contract, he does have 3 more seasons left, including this one. So 2 more after this one with a cap hit of $6.5 million. So that's not too bad. Only 2 more seasons after this one with a cap hit of 6.5. Now he does have a modified no trade clause, which did kick in, back on July 1st, which is a 15-team no trade list. So just under half the league there, he can pretty much block out, but that still leaves quite a few teams there, for the Rangers to possibly trade him too. So I think a deal can definitely still get done. And personally, that $6.5 million cap, it doesn't seem that bad for what Kreider can bring. But obviously, what we've seen this season so far, it hasn't been quite phenomenal. Now, he's obviously still scoring goals at a very good level. It's just, the overall kind of points aren't quite there to where they're kind of normally at. Obviously, last season we saw Kreider have a total of 82 games played, 39 goals, 36 assists, 75 total points. Did a pretty good overall job there, producing some phenomenal offensive numbers. But then you got this season where he's definitely taken a decent sized step back, where he's got 48 games played, 17 goals, which isn't terrible, but only 4 assists for 21 total points. And It really is kind of wild to see a player have more than 4 times the amount of goals than he does assists, especially when you consider how much power play time Chris Kreider gets. You'd think he'd have at least a couple more kind of secondary assists or something, but he doesn't. He has 4 assists total, 17 goals, 21 points, and it just is wild to see a player have more than 4 times the amount of goals and assists. Obviously, there are a lot of players like Kreider who normally do have more goals than assists, but it's just wild to see a player have this many more goals compared to assists. And, I think overall, when you do really take a look at trading away a guy like Chris Kreider, though, like I said, you do get to open up a lot of cap space at 6.5 mil worth. You are also trading away an older player where you can kind of open up that spot for a guy like a Brett Berard or Brendan Hoffman to kind of really get a good chance at having a full-time spot to begin next season in that top 9 there with, Kreider being off the books. You obviously open up that spot in the top 9. So I think that would definitely be helpful for some of these young prospects to kind of have more of an opportunity to compete for spots. Now, this team is going to be wanting to compete next season, but I do still think trading away a guy like Kreider would make sense there. And, I understand keeping him around could be a very good thing as well. And I'm not against that either, because you could have a solid veteran guy around who can definitely score goals at a great level. We know that. But with him getting up there in age, and obviously with this Rangers team kind of trying to go in a different direction, it seems like with this core of players, I think it makes a lot of sense there to get off that contract, open up that spot, and really just kind of move on towards a different kind of core group of players going forward. And it really does kind of depend, though, on what teams are offering up for a guy like Chris Kreider. I'm sure there is definitely going to be interest. He's only making 6.5 mil there for 2 seasons after this one. It's not too bad, and Kreider's not terribly old yet. It doesn't seem like he's completely washed. I definitely don't think so. So at this point there, I'm sure there are going to be teams quite interested in trading for a guy like Chris Kreider, who I definitely still think has quite a bit to bring. I think he's still can possibly be, that 30-plus goal scorer, something around there. Don't know if he's ever going to quite get to that 40 mark again, but definitely, around that kind of lower 30s, high 20s is definitely still, obviously, a very realistic kind of mark for him to be at. And you also, I've have to consider he's going to be a more than likely pretty solid defensive winger as well. I think is obviously still a guy who can definitely still bring a solid defensive game, bring a bit of physicality, a bit of speed to the lineup there, and just bring also a bit of veteran leadership there. He's got a lot of experience in the playoffs as well. So I'm sure there'll be multiple teams and will be multiple teams interested in trading for a guy like Chris Kreider. And judging the actual kind of value for Kreider as well, I think is a little difficult with kind of the injury happening now and him missing quite a bit of time, and obviously him having 2 more years left under contract makes things interesting. He's got that obviously 15-team no trade list, so that cuts down about half the league there almost. I don't know exactly what his true value is right now, especially with this kind of weird season, having 17 goals, 4 assists. And also him not having the best overall kind of play compared to normal, it definitely makes his value quite interesting. And I'm not quite sure really where it's at as of this second, but I think the main thing is definitely trying to get back a decent bit of value. It doesn't have to be like, a first-round pick and a great young player, obviously, at the NHL level, but I just think the Rangers need to get back some solid value there, and it doesn't have to be necessarily like an NHL player coming back in return. It could just be, a couple picks and a prospect or 2 possibly. That wouldn't be the worst idea, because you're also, thinking about it, you're opening up that cap space there to possibly use this upcoming offseason as well. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens with Kreider here, whether he does or doesn't get traded away. But either way, I'm not against it. I just think, Kreider has been such a great, long-time New York Ranger. He's obviously the longest-tenured guy right now, and I definitely would be sad to see him go, although I fully understand it's a business. And as a fan, I just want to see this team get back towards competing for a Stanley Cup. And if the best thing to do that is to trade away a guy like Kreider, get some assets back in return, and kind of move on even more towards a different kind of core group of players. I'm definitely not against that. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video, about this possible Chris Kreider trade situation. What do you think the New York Rangers could actually possibly get back in return? And also, which teams do you think could be interested? Because I'm kind of curious, do you think a team like maybe Anaheim or San Jose or one of these kind of lower tier teams who are, trying to get out of the rebuild, do you think one of those kind of teams could possibly look to trade for someone like Kreider? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on this whole situation and about the Rangers. I'll catch you next one. Bye.